Check, 1, 2. Are you scared of everything now?
No.
You said you're not a fraidy cat, but you wouldn't let go of my arm for the whole screening. That was awkward.
Just weird. I was 2 rows behind you, too.
Yeah. Strange. We're going to bring up Oren Peli in a second, but thanks again for coming. Really hope you liked that 2-hour series premiere of The River.
We had not seen the second hour prior to this. That was very, very intense, the second hour especially.
With the dolls and the dragonflies, and now I'm afraid of rivers and water and boats. So we're going to bring Oren up in a second. He is, of course, the co-creator and executive producer of this awesome show, which we're going to be treated to on CTV Tuesdays at 9. And Oren was raised in Israel, came over to America in his late teens, and he actually was a software designer and a game developer.
Yeah, even at a young age, at 16, he began coding software. Some of it was quite successful, and then he made the leap into filmmaking with Paranormal Activity, which went on to be one of the highest-grossing horror films of all time. Versus its budget, it's become a huge franchise.
That made me scared to be in my bedroom. Now he's made me scared to be on water and in boats and of dolls. So
now, if he could just make one that'll make me a lot scared of the workplace, I could.
So Oren also produced the hit Insidious recently. He was also the producer behind the 2 Paranormal Activity follow-ups, Paranormal Activities 2 and 3. And he's a really, really busy guy. He's the writer and director behind the upcoming Area 51. And then as a producer, he's also behind upcoming projects directed by the likes of Barry Levinson and one of my favorites, Rob Zombie. So he's a really, really, really busy guy, and we're really stoked that he could make it up to Toronto to be here with us tonight and answer some of our questions and talk about this amazing show, The River. Please welcome creator and executive producer, Oren Peli.
Oren Peli, everyone.
Hello. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Well, as I said off the top, you made me scared of my bedroom in Paranormal Activity. Now I'm scared of everything to do with water and boats. Is it gratifying scaring the heck out of people? Do you like that?
Well, I don't think it's so much that I like it. I think a lot of people like to be scared. That's why they go, to see horror movies. They go on the roller coaster rides. They like the thrill. So if people do get scared from a movie, I take it as a compliment.
You do. Now, earlier today when we had you in studio for Innerspace, we asked what scares you, and you told the story of being terrified of The Exorcist when you were a kid. So is this, venturing into the land of horror, is that something to make you feel better about being terrified yourself?
Well, I mean, the Exorcist did traumatize me when I was a kid, but I've kind of gotten over it. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's directly related, but it did make me appreciate the power of a good horror movie that really gets to you, and that's what I was trying to capture in the Paranormal Activity.
Well, with The River, can you talk about where the idea came from? Did you have a particularly scary trip down the Amazon at any point, or where did the idea come from?
No, actually, I've never been to the Amazon. Would love to go. Maybe not to the places, in this series.
No, there's magic there, really scary.
No, the good kind of magic.
Yeah.
Avoid the dolls.
Right. But the idea started with an idea for a movie that was going to be about a missing nature show host. It didn't have the river element. It was just a rainforest, and the idea wasn't very developed. It was just the idea that we're following a rescue mission to find them, and along the way, we run into tapes showing like horrible things happening to them, and I thought it would be really creepy to find a tape from someone that something bad happened to them, knowing that you have to continue down that way. So that was kind of like the grain of the idea. But then after a meeting that I had with Steven Spielberg, and he said, do you have any ideas for a TV show, something along the lines of Paranormal Activity? A few months later, I was hanging out with the writer of Paranormal Activity 2, and I told him the idea I had for the Rainforest movie, and he said, why just waste it on a movie? You can turn it into a TV show. And he started, kind of pitching the idea of how it can be turned into a TV show. And he put the show on the river and the boat and all the characters and all the elements that we have now.
Well, the setting certainly makes for a scary show. Was it difficult and scary shooting? I know you weren't actually on the Amazon, but in those conditions with all those people around, was there anything scary that happened, or was there a big challenge that you had to overcome?
Well, it's definitely tricky when you have to shoot in a remote location. We had to shoot on actual bodies of water. We had to shoot on boats, and a lot of the stuff that you're seeing is really the actors running around in jungles and in zodiacs and that kind of stuff. So that definitely presents its own challenges. There's one story that I heard. I wasn't there, so I hope I'm not lying, but that's the story that I heard. And in a later episode, we're shooting in a place that is really an abandoned mental a children's hospital, like orphanage.
Yes.
And so that's not part of the plot. That's like the actual location. And a lot of the crew refused to work there, and they made us like bless the place, and a lot of the crew members actually left. And I guess there was like a creepy graveyard for kids that was like in front of it. And, and everyone that was there said there was a very creepy atmosphere there. And the story that I heard is that Thomas Kretschmann, who plays the German security guard, he was standing like on top of the stairs, and someone kicked him so hard that he fell and broke his ankle. And he turned around, and there was no one behind him.
What?
So again, I wasn't there, but that's a story I heard.
You had 13 cameras for this show. Were any of them rolling at this point?
That was between takes, actually. Yeah.
It's always the way. Can you talk a bit about how you approach shooting this? Because obviously you're delving back into that territory of found footage. You also have the security cameras. So how many cameras did you have going at any one time?
Well, almost always we would have at least one or two handheld cameras. Sometimes we would only have the stationary cameras. And what's cool about it is that the actors would never know which camera is shooting, which camera we're going to use. Sometimes there would be 10 or 12 cameras rolling at the same time. So they weren't really playing for a specific camera. They were just kind of going about the business of being immersed in their character and the environment, which I think kind of helped create a more natural performance.
And they can't slack off, right? Because there's always a camera on them. So
yeah, there's always something capturing something. And in many cases, when you see the actors actually operating the camera, then the cameras would always be rolling. And in some cases, we do use footage that the actors themselves filmed. Like in the stuff that Bruce Greenwood is filming himself, that's really him holding a handycam, crawling into some wall or a little hole in the wall or a cave. And, you know, we give him like the general idea, and he just does his own thing, and he comes back and like, oh, awesome, cool.
Bruce Greenwood's a great DOP. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about casting him? Because obviously we loved him in Star Trek movies like National Treasure, Book of Secrets, 13 Days. How did you decide on him as Dr. Emmett Cole?
Well, we knew that the character of Emmett Cole is going to be really one of the most important characters, even though we don't see a lot of him at the beginning. He's kind of like the driving force for why everyone is there. And someone mentioned his name when we were going through them, and everyone's like, yeah, he would be awesome. And once we got stuck on Bruce Greenwood, we kind of even stopped talking about anyone else. And we said, we just have to go for Bruce Greenwood. We just thought he would be absolutely perfect. And we pursued him, and he's like a very smart guy, so he wanted to make sure that the character is well thought of, and that we know where we're going with the series, where his character is going to develop. So it took a lot of coaxing, but eventually, like really close to the start of the shooting date, he finally, agreed to be on, which was really good for us because we didn't have a second choice, and we would have been really screwed if he said no.
Did you tell him in advance about shooting at the children's graveyard, or did you wait until he signed?
We waited.
Yeah.
Well, before we open it up to questions from the floor, does anyone have any? Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. Last question for you then. With regards to knowing where you're going, how far do you know ahead where you want to take this series? Because we've had some series in the past where it seemed like we knew where we were going, but when we got there, some people were disappointed.
Are you asking about a black smoke monster? Is that what's
I'm
happening?
not saying anything specifically.
Well, if you're asking about Lost, then we all really loved Lost. And,
I did too.
Yeah, and I watched the whole season through. I mean the whole show. I thought the first couple of seasons were some of the best TV I've ever seen, and then it got a little confusing. And it was done by ABC, and they did learn their lessons, and they were saying that we can't really string people along, for too long, and that's why it's really important for us that every episode is kind of like its own self-contained mini horror movie, and every season is its self-contained season that does lead off, cliffhanger to the next one. But we do have a roadmap. We know if we're going to get picked up for more seasons. We don't have, every single episode written, but we know where we're going, and we know kind of like what's our ultimate end goal.
Very cool.
The source, that kind of intrigued me in the first hour. Will we find out what the source is?
Maybe. I'm not going to give you any information, but there will be answers eventually.
Cool. Awesome. Questions from the floor. Just put up your hand. I thought a few people said yes out there. Hello.
So what if you're not a hit? Are we going to see an outcome and stay up?
I have no idea. That's, I just make the episodes. They'll be up to the networks. I believe they're going to air all the episodes no matter what. Hopefully the fans will tune in and, we'll get picked up for more, but who knows?
Been a lot of great advance buzz about the show. IO9, one of my favorite sites, called it the best pilot they've seen in years. Has that been heartening for you, all of this advance buzz?
Yeah, we're getting really good buzz so far. We're getting, great reviews, and people seem to respond very positively to it. So we're optimistic, but, you never know. So we'll find out soon enough.
We liked it. Another question?
With 13 to 15 the editing room?
Some of the more complex things are storyboarded. In other situations, we deliberately try to give it kind of like a messy feeling. So the actors, we have kind of like a general idea what's going on in the scene, but we don't tell them, this is your X mark and you need to walk to the Y mark. We just tell them this is what's happening in general, and we let them kind of like, find themselves in the scene and not worry about which camera is filming them. And then, it's a nightmare for the editor to sort out through all the footage.
Okay. Do you mind if I follow up? Or how many of the special effects are practical, and how many are post?
Most of the special effects, as much as we can get away with, are practical. Some of the CGI is actually just more like enhancing the scenery, and we wanted to add like a bird or something like that in the background. So we try to do as much of the stuff practical as we can, and use CGI mostly to enhance the scenery.
There's one right here.
How difficult was it to write to a TV format as opposed to writing for a film format where there's a lot more tension you can build up?
It's very tricky for several reasons. First of all, you have to take into consideration commercial breaks, and you have, in one sense, a lot less time to tell a story. You only have an hour, which is actually 40-something minutes, and in a movie you have an hour and a half or 2 hours. But if you think about it in the context of a season, then you actually have a lot more time. You don't have to tell an entire story of a character in one episode. You can introduce them and then build up on them in every consequent episode. So you actually can get in far more depth into characters and relationships and dynamics than you would ever get the opportunity in a movie. So it does take a lot of planning, and it is tricky. But once you kind of embrace it, then it gives you a lot of options.
When coming up with a concept for a show like this, and you've got you're pitching it, do you have like a 1 year, 1 season, 2 season, 3 season type of roadmap, or is it just something like, well, if we don't get picked up, we need to give this to the audience, we're going to close it off like this, and if we don't, how does that work?
Well, usually in a pitch, we would mostly focus about the pilot and introduce the characters, and then the sort of like the overall view for the first season. And then we say, and if we get picked up for more seasons, this is our idea for the second season, third, fourth, fifth, and this is kind of like the big season finale, the big show finale, if we ever get there. So we do kind of pitch the whole overview for the show.
So do you have when you're pitching it, are you like, well, we see it as kind of a 5-season thing, or do we see this as like a 3-season thing? And does that even come into consideration at the beginning, or are you just thinking about 1 season and hopefully you could get picked up for another one?
Well, it's both, because we need to focus first of all on each individual episode that needs to stand on its own, and then we need to focus on the season. If we never get picked up for more, we want to make sure that we have one really great season, and if that's all it is, we want it to have a great beginning and a great conclusion that's satisfying, even if it does leave some questions unanswered. But we do have an idea of where we're going to go on future seasons, and we don't know in advance how many seasons we're going to have. So if they're going to tell us, one at a time, you're only going to get one more season, we'll make sure to get the most out of that one. If they're going to tell us you have 4 seasons, that's it, then we're going to plot out the whole, the rest of the show all the way to our end goal.
Can I ask you about humor in the show? Because I'm fascinated between the connection between horror and laughter. It seems when people get scared, but their next reaction is often to laugh, and especially the scene where Emmett was putting the bear back on the tree. It was pretty funny at points, right? So is that something that you intend to build on as you go along with the show, that connection between laughter and being just scared out of your wits?
Yeah, as much as we can. There's the deliberate, comedy that we're trying to put in sometimes just to kind of release tension, and it just makes the show more entertaining. And we also notice that sometimes people in places where we don't think are supposed to be comedy, that are supposed to be really tense, that people just laugh, kind of this nervous laughter, which is sometimes also a good sign that you're getting to them.
What informs the scares, if I may ask? Because I know that there's some mythology that is interwoven with this, and you're actually looking to stories from the Amazon. Do you think of, it'd be really, really scary if they came across this tree that had dolls tied to it, or did you realize, there's some mythology that has that, and we'll just incorporate that into the show?
It's a little bit of both. Before we got started on doing the season, we did a lot of research into the mythology of the Amazon and other exotic parts of the world, and we found so many stories that are real, that local tribes and villagers believe in, that have been passed from one generation to another over hundreds or thousands of years. And so we created kind of like our encyclopedia of mythology, and then we figured what can we use in which episode that will serve the purpose of the story. And we still have a lot of material left for future episodes.
Can you tell me what